everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be one of my favorite tours of my garden because we're going to be looking at my favorite flower. I do this tour once a year just to show all the roses when they're in bloom. I will say though that we just had a pretty significant storm come through the last 2 days, and some of the roses are not looking their best, but I'm still going to show you them anyway because that's the reality of gardening. Gardening is not always having the pretty, but dealing with nature as well. So we're going to start here in this flower bed that's on the way up to my office, which is right here. And then we'll eventually end at the office because there are a couple of moments up there that's looking really, really pretty at the moment. The first flower bed we're going to look at today is one of the flower beds in front of the vegetable garden. When we came through here last time, there were clematises blooming on this shepherd's rod here where the birdhouse is, and they have since gone over. I think there's one bloom back here, but in front of it is this rose. This is the rose zade. She blooms in clusters of nice, tightly petaled blooms. As you can see here, there are going to be 5 just in this cluster alone. There were several over here, but I take the dead ones off once they die. But she is such a lovely color and a very prolific bloomer. Underplanted is a white drift rose. Next to it are some rose campion that are blooming. And you'll notice this magenta color popping up all over the yard. This purple color, and you'll see it pinkish looking in some areas, is Tradescanthia. Tradescanthia has really taken over my yard, and most of them I've not planted. Matter of fact, I pulled some out earlier. In this bed is this other rose called Port Sunlight. It is a David Austin rose. This is the first year for it in the garden. I had another one, and the polar vortex of a couple of years ago killed it. This over here is called Bring Me Sunshine, and then but it hasn't bloomed yet. It's also the first year in the garden. There is a bloom there and a couple more coming. And then this one is Eustacia Vi. Isn't she luscious? She's beautiful, such a pretty pink. And then she's planted with some dianthus and this old world climbing rose in this beautiful shade of burgundy. This one blooms in tightly clustered blooms. See how many blooms are on one cluster? See? I just absolutely love that. And she really pops against this Wine and Roses Weigela. And when it was blooming and this was blooming together, I think I have a photo I'll share of that. It was a beautiful capture. Now this rose is probably the only, no, I have 2 red roses in the garden. This one is Stiletto, and it's not supposed to be a climber, but it's wanting to be a climber. Do you see those tall canes that it's putting out? And I'm also happy with my vegetable garden in the background. So please, if I fangirl for a moment over my garden, because it's looking really good after the rain. Anyway, back to the roses. So Stiletto has not bloomed yet, but you could see right there the beginnings of some blooms coming, and I'm not mad about it. In our last video, we had cardinals roosting in this rose bush right here. They have since fledged. They're gone. They had 3 babies. They've raised them, and now they're busy running around the yard. This is the rose Florentina. So I have a red climber and another red rose, basically to echo the same color on the opposite sides of the entrance to the garden. So this is the climbing rose Florentina, and she's a very cupped climber, very, very pretty. I just have never truly been a huge fan of red roses, but I liked this one. This plant is a Southern Living Plantation Jubilation hydrangea. Is that not beautiful? And you can see all the other blooms on this thing. Now, one of the things I do about my garden is I try to have something that blooms with a fragrance for every season for that particular flower bed. And the reason is when you sit and have all your senses activated in the garden, it makes for a better, more pleasant experience in the garden. So over here, I also have a gardenia, but it's not blooming like this one is yet. We're gonna get to this bed. Just give me a minute. More rose campion here. And then over here, the veronicas are starting to bloom. You can see those as well. The red hot poker or the Nymphophias are blooming. And this rose has already put on a flush. And you can see with these buds, another one is coming. This is the Rose Julia Child. This is a knockout rose back here, and it too was blooming prior to the storm. Over here, you will see one of my favorite, absolute favorite roses in my garden. It is probably tied with Sweet Mademoiselle for my favorite. This is Crazy Love Rose. And Crazy Love also blooms in clusters of blooms most of the time. See, this is what it typically looks like. But here is just one. Here is just one. So it alternates, but it's a lovely, lovely, lovely rose. And these blooms are so heavy because of the rain. Here's one that fell off. Isn't that pretty? I think I'll put that in my hair. So we have Crazy Love. I have two of those. This one is blooming and the other one is getting ready to bloom at the other end. On this end, I added one of my old-fashioned heirloom damask rose, and it actually bloomed last week. And I think it has one more bloom to go this week. Okay. Need to come and deadhead this, but it did well for having been transplanted over here. It's going to fill in this entire section, and I'm loving it. So this is where we were. Another bed that I haven't talked about, but I'm going to give you a tour and explain all about it, is my sensory garden. And in this garden, I have 4 roses. I have Plum Perfect here, Coco Loco over there, Distance Drums at that corner, and Bliss Parfuma in this corner. The roses in this bed were just planted this spring. They're from Heirloom Roses. I am an ambassador for Heirloom Roses. I just love their roses, y'all. I find that because they're own root, they last a long time. They do extremely well. These are all new, and they've put on so much growth in such a short period of time. They have not all bloomed yet. Plum Perfect is the only one that has bloomed. And I am excited to see Bliss Parfuma. She's getting ready to open. And so is Coco Loco on the other side. Distance Drums. She has quite a few buds for a new rose, but she's just not opened yet. The front border has a mix of knockout roses, David Austin roses, other roses, just because I love roses. This is Queen Elizabeth. She is almost passed over. This is her first set of blooms. I cleaned up that one yesterday. This is a iceberg climbing rose, and I have plans to build the second entrance like this, probably by June. And then these will be able to be pruned and trellised as they should be. So one iceberg climbing rose on each side with a Jacquemini clematis on each side. And this is another Queen Elizabeth. You see, she died back a little bit. She had some black spot. And I just let the roses do their thing. I do not spray I try to be a spray-free garden as much as possible and only treat things when they get to a point of infestation. But usually my garden takes care of itself. So this is Queen of Sweden. She's already bloomed and she's getting ready to bloom. I'll insert a picture so you see what she looks like. Very pretty pink bloom. Over here is my heirloom yellow rose, and you can see she's got quite a few more buds. I pruned her back yesterday. Not pruned her back, but I cleaned her up. I like to deadhead and keep things as neat as possible. There are 2 of them in this bed. One thing about the damask rose that I showed you in our last video is that she blooms early and then she fades. So that's her over there next to a knockout rose. There are actually 3 knockout roses around the porch. So let's take a look here at this rose. This is Shepherdess by David Austin, and she's stunning. I have 2 of those. This side I've already deadheaded. There's a knockout rose there. Over here we have Emily Bronte, and I will insert a picture because I'm wearing a dress and I don't want to step into the wet flower bed. This is the At Last Rose by Proven Winners. It's doing a pretty good job this year, but it's already bloomed. That's a red drift rose, and that's a coral knockout rose. That's Fun in the Sun rose, and I also have State of Grace rose here. She's not blooming at the moment. This is a popcorn rose, named so because of the coloring, and it does look a little bit like popcorn. This is a Darcy Bustle rose here by David Austin. I need to insert a picture for you because it's already bloomed. Another knockout rose. There is a drift knockout, a drift rose, peach drift back there. And then there's another rose, Soul Sister, that I'm waiting to bloom. There's another Darcy Bustle. Do you see how red and petaled that is? Very, very pretty. This is Olivia Rose Austin. Right here, I need to insert a picture because some of these I had to deadhead their first set of blooms. Now this is the Eden Climber Rose, and her blooms are spent, but she's actually putting on new growth, which is good because I had her someplace else last year and she did not do as well. Another knockout rose, and there's another rose back in here you can't see. I need to clean out around her. I like to plant my roses in with the other things so that when they are done blooming, other things can cover. This is a Bathsheba climbing rose. Bathsheba had a little hissy fit, lost all her foliage, and is now growing back and looking so much healthier and having loads. Look at all these blooms. So I'm gonna let her do her thing. This is a Charles DeMille rose right here, but he's already bloomed. I'll show you what that looks like. This is 4th of July climbing rose. She's also bloomed, but has some more buds coming. This was a Floribunda rose, did pretty well. And then this is also a Floribunda rose, but they're all going over, and the rain has made them look a little on the unsightly side. Do you see Miss Bertha looking just as lovely? Over here I have a petite knockout rose, and she is looking lovely too. That phlox is already blooming down there. All right, let's take a look around the memorial garden, and we'll start over here. The memorial garden has quite a few roses. I think the last I counted was 12. Here's a nitty gritty peach rose. This is by Monrovia. I love the shading on this, the frilliness of the blooms, and it's prolific. As you can see, the rain knocked off quite a bit of the petals. And of course our penstemon, which I interplant, and liatris, and agastache, or agastaki, however you want to say it, is interplanted to give it a nice cottage garden vibe. This is the rose Bolero. Do you see how beautiful that rose is? This one is Princess Charlene de Monaco, and I'll put some other footage that I have of it. You can see they're all still budded. It's just that what was blooming came out. The Nyphophia here is just about done, so I'll cut those back. Back here is a series of 3 Mademoiselle roses, and I'll take you over there to see them. There's one right here that I just planted this year. That's not as big. She was a gift from my friend Vanessa, and she's put on a lot of growth. So she's gonna fill in this section here, and then she'll be just as pretty as these here. She makes for an excellent cut flower rose. And the blooms on her are humongous. Look at that. Stunning. And she blooms in clusters of blooms as well. Pretty, right? She is tied for my second favorite in the garden. So between her and Crazy Love, I am very happy. You notice a lot of the blooms are turned down. That's because they became so heavy with rain. But aren't they lovely? So pretty. And the color is just so spectacular. It's such a pretty corally pink, peachy color that it's just perfect. Next to it is another of my favorite roses. You'll hear me say that a lot. I love most of the roses in my garden. Love, love, love. I think there's one that I'm contemplating removing. I haven't made up my mind yet, so I won't say anything. But isn't this pretty? This is Earth Angel Rose. She is a prolific bloomer. She has peony-esque blooms in this palest of pink that kind of fades to a whitish color. I have 3 of these in the garden. 3 Mademoiselle, 2 Crazy Love, and then one of most of the others, 2 Shepherdess. Calla lilies are coming. This is Moonlight Romantica, and just finished blooming. This pretty pale yellow. I'll insert a picture of what it looked like in bloom, and loads more buds to come. This is another Bolero rose. Just as pretty. This over here is called Charisma. Look at these. Look at the color on these. Aren't those beautiful? I have 3 of these Charisma roses in here. They start out this vibrant orange and then fade to that color. This is supposed to be a curly pink. This is another Earth Angel rose. You can tell by the petals around it, it too was covered in blooms. All these sticks are dahlias, and so far I think of the 22 in this bed, 19 are awake. I'm waiting on a couple more to wake up and do their thing. Another Earth Angel rose. Look at this bloom. How beautiful is this? More, tons more blooms to come. And then another of these peachy rose that I said started out. Isn't that pretty? So, so pretty. You hear the birds. Such lovely sounds. The garden is looking so lovely at the moment. Very cottage gardeny. This is also a yellow rose here. And of course our ladybanks is done blooming and put on a ton of growth since I last showed you her. See, even my knockout roses lost a lot of their petals in the rain. It was also extremely windy. This is a Julia Child rose. I have 3 of her in the garden. I'll show you a good picture of her. See, even this shrub was blown out of proportion. Everything is coming this way, and it usually fills in the corner over there, so I'm gonna have to fix it. Here's another beautiful rose. This is called La Park. It also lost quite a few of the petals, you see. So I do still have some damask rose blooming. Just a few in the yard. And the fragrance is stunning. It's just as yummy. Here is another of those Floribunda rose. There should be another one here, but it's not blooming. And then we have some white drift roses. I'll take you closer. I've got to come back and get all of these Virginia's wort cut back because with the storm they fell over and they look unsightly. This is a white drift rose. You can see tons of buds. So it's just beginning to bloom. This one over here is blooming also. So this is the front, looking just as pretty. All the colors, all the roses. Let's take a look at the back, the driveway gardens. Oh, I haven't shown you this. More penstemon blooming. This is a knockout rose here. It's in between blooms. Here is a Julia Child rose. A drift rose. A knockout rose. And this, I think they call this Seven Sisters rose. I keep it contained on this arbor. Look at this lily. We'll have more lilies in the next tour. You can see the hydrangeas are coming quickly too. This is the John Winters, I think it is. I'll put the name on the screen, Spirea. Pretty, right? You can see the storm did a number on her. She's looking a little untidy, and there's not much I can do. Wind damage just has to live with. Gara. Just whirling butterflies is what they're called. The back flower border is a series of alternating drift rose, rose campion, lilies. Right now we have some alliums that are blooming, these white balls. We have sweet drift, white drift, pink drift. That's a phantom hydrangea. And I have different varieties of lilies. Some Queen Anne's lace. This is Kaleidoscope Opal. She needs to be deadheaded. More rose campion. That's all that's blooming back here at the moment. We also have our shaded area of this bed. That's still looking very pretty, just not much color at the moment. A winterer, I'll put the name up, Spirea. More rose campion, and like I said, the rain and wind did a number. We were under a tornado watch for most of yesterday and last night, so I'm not surprised we have so many things that look half dead, so to speak. This is a golden celebration rose. Show you some more footage of it. This is an Henri, or Henry. Henri clematis. It's French. Henri. There's a Cecil Brunner climber that's just beginning to do something back here. So I'll show you in our next tour. Look at this iris. Look at this lily. Isn't that a stunning color? So vivid. Here's some more of that damask rose. That's very fragrant. And some more of these lilies. Do you remember me cutting back this shrub and how far back I pruned it? I'm going to insert a picture so you can see. Look at how full it is. I told you it would fill in that entire area and it would not look so strange. This is Crown Princess Margarita. She's very pretty, just needs some deadheading. She's putting on some not a new healthy growth. I don't treat black spot. I don't spray because I like my garden to have little creatures like this, which are lizards, and they eat the bugs. Look, here's my shadow. They eat the bugs. Doesn't that look pretty, y'all? let's go up by my office and we'll finish up our tour. On the way up, do you see what I see? How stunning this is. This is a Peggy Martin climber. She's tall enough to go across, but I liked that look this year, so I'm leaving it, and then I'm going to train her across the top here. Before we get to the office studio beds, here is another shepherdess rose up here. Ain't she pretty? She just has such a dainty color, and she smells heavenly, y'all. Okay, this rose over here is called Double Delight. Look at her coloring. Almost like she glows, right? And she's got a lot of blooms over here and some more to come. It's the healthiest I've seen her look. This is all damask rose that has bloomed already. In our last video, we looked at this rose, which is the Westerland climbing rose. I'll insert some footage. She's done. She finished her last set of blooms with the storm. You can see all the petals on the ground here. This is a rose by the name of Fashion, and there's another one up there. I want you to see, or is it Bonaire? I think it's Bonaire. Bonaire. You should see the blooms, the color, and how large they are. This is Hermione Rose. She's stunning, right? And loads and loads and loads of blooms. Loads of blooms. I wanted to show also that my calla lilies up here are also blooming. I have a bunch here and a bunch here, and they make the prettiest bouquets. I like to cut them and put them in bouquets. This rose here is Carding Mill, and this is her second flush of blooms. I've already deadheaded her once. The smell, exceptional, exquisite. The blooms, beautiful. The color, just unmatched. It's just the perfect rose, except the perfect rose, because of course I love peachy colored rose. As you can see, my table is becoming less and less. I've planted out my dahlias. I've planted out my tomatoes. I just moved these squashes and pumpkins out this week. They're going in the garden next week, as well as the other tray of flowers that I started. So I'm very close to emptying out my garden, my seedlings rather. This is Peggy Martin Rose. I keep talking about her because she is just this pretty and her blooms last forever. And then look, since we last spoke, this cane, she threw up this cane. I'm going to actually, put it back on the post, but just to show you how vigorous of a grower she is. Here is this big rose that I was telling you. See how big her blooms are? One bloom fills my hand. So, so big and pretty. She makes a nice cut flower. More Nyphophia. This is Uriah, Japanese Ansata. It's a Japanese iris. Look at this gardenia with all these buds, and she's blooming. So I was sitting out here the other day, and the fragrance was very pleasant. Here is a pink lemonade, Baptisia. There's another one here, and another Nyphophia here. And the lilies up here are beginning to open. More penstemon. This is a Forever Susan Asiatic lily. protecting my strawberries from the birds, y'all. My herbs and mint, out of control. Look at how big and lush they are. Thank you for joining me today on this tour of my garden to see my roses in bloom and the status of the garden at this time. Unfortunately, we had that storm that kind of dampened some of the blooms, so it took a little bit of the shine off, but I hope you could overlook that and see just how lovely the garden is looking at this time of the year. Yes, I managed to stick that rose that fell off in my here, and I just feel extra tied to my garden at this time. If you've enjoyed my tour or any of the content on my channel, please consider subscribing. Until next time, happy gardening.